So it's my pleasure to introduce the U.S. Senator Evan Bayh.
Well, thank you very much. I was just saying to Steve, his introduction was so nice. It was almost exactly the way I wrote it. So I was grateful to him for all those kind words. But even more than that, Steve, to you, to the folks at Frontline, I'm grateful for the example that you set. And I hope that all of you can serve as an inspiration for perhaps some other people here in Howard County and the surrounding area to follow your example, to follow that dream, to take that risk. It's a big step starting a company. You know, an idea, a good, a service, to try and get out of your comfort zone of where you are today to build something better. And so the fact that you've done it and overcome some of these hurdles, I hope can inspire other people to do the same. Ruth, I'm grateful to you. This is our second year together now, and I hope we'll keep doing these. I've been doing them around the state it's our fifth year, and we've been able to place successfully so far more than 500 people in jobs across the state of Indiana, and an unknown number of entrepreneurs having access to credit, to some management advice, start their own companies. And I always tell our young people that the best ticket to success is still a higher education. You know, you look at the income growth across our society over the last 20 or 30 years, people with advanced degrees have done remarkably well. People with a college education have seen their standards of living improve in material terms. Folks who went to high school only, they've stagnated a little bit, and people who dropped out of high school, those are the folks who've really gotten hammered. They've seen their wages decline substantially. So you look at that, and the lesson is pretty clear. The more education you can get, the better you're going to do economically, and that's what we're in the business of doing right here. And I'm grateful to you for your leadership in helping to make that happen. And to all of you, I'm grateful for your time here on a weekday, so let me get right to the heart of the matter. We're here today to help people find jobs, to improve their skills, to get better jobs, and to help potential entrepreneurs get started in small business. All these things are important. When our people are working, when they're providing for their families, when their wages are rising, things are so much easier. I learned firsthand as our governor back, somebody asked me, I was on a call-in radio program in Indianapolis a day or two ago. He said, how old were you when you became governor, 32 or 33? I said, well, most people think it was 16. But it was when I was 33, and we had a recession start about 9 months after I took office. And all the funding we hoped to have for education dried up. The money for health care dried up. All the other things that we wanted to try and do, it was much more difficult. So I learned early on, and one of the things I always look at, Steve, is what does this mean for competitiveness? What does this mean for productivity growth? How do we expand our companies? How do we get our people employed? Because that's the foundation we build on that makes everything else possible. And we're trying to strengthen that foundation here today. In order to do that, we got to focus on small business. 80% of the new jobs that we create, 80% are created by smaller businesses. Over the last 20 years for our country as a whole, I found this to be kind of amazing. You take the Fortune 500, the 500 largest companies in America, and you add up all the new jobs they've created. The figure is zero. Some have added jobs, but some have shrunk. And you net it out, it's zero. This is at a time when our country's been adding 20, 25 million new jobs. So the most dynamic part of the economy are smaller and medium-sized companies, but they face some hurdles that the big companies don't. And so whether it's trying to get more research funding for small businesses, I'd like to see us double that, because they're some of the most creative companies we have in the state today. 46 businesses last year. We were able to get them about $17 million in R&D funding. I'd like to double that to $34 million so we can help about 100 smaller companies. And we've got some good ones like Airvoyance across the state. Business incubators like the one that both Ruth and Steve mentioned, so that we can get the companies started with some help with the overhead and access to the kind of support that larger companies take for granted that you and your company can't. I think we were able to get about $1 million from this center here. That's a good investment in the future of our state's economy. Doing more business with the federal and state governments. We contract for billions of dollars. The big guys, they hardly notice. But for smaller companies, it can make a real difference. So all these things that can help our small businesses get started, flourish, grow, this is good for Indiana's economy. And so that's what we're focusing on here today. And the final thing, I'm proud that IU is represented here, Ivy Tech, several other educational and training institutions here today, so that if you're employed and you want to improve your skills, you get a better job, perhaps change careers, there's a path for you to do that here today as well. All those things together we're focused on today. The last thing I'd mention, and it's kind of a little bit of a broader point, when you look at the public opinion polls today for our country as a whole, I think Indiana is probably representative of the country in this regard, about 70% of the American people now feel that our country is going in the wrong direction. More than half of our people now believe, for the first time in history, since they've been doing public opinion polls, this is the first time this has happened, more than half of Americans now feel that our children will inherit from us a country that is less prosperous and less secure than we inherited from our parents and grandparents. This has never happened before. Part of the American dream has always been that all of us make the hard decisions, work hard, and try and pass on to our kids a country that's a little bit better, a little more prosperous, a little more decent, a little more just. And we're at risk of having that implicit promise that America has always held out from one generation to the next. We're open for the first time. But it doesn't have to be that way. That does not have to happen. It's up to us to meet these challenges, to forge a better America. We can do this. But it's not going to happen in Washington, D.C. I know so many of our citizens today, they look at the government, whether it's federal or state or local, they go, it's wasteful, these guys are ineffective, and too many of them are corrupt. And regrettably, from time to time, there's some evidence to support those feelings. But it doesn't have to be like that, because the answer is not going to come from Washington, D.C. or Indianapolis. It's going to come in places like Kokomo and Howard County, all of us getting together at places like this. The government, the private sector, academics, one business, one family at a time, getting our people employed so they can provide for themselves, helping our businesses grow from 4 employees to 5 to 6, creating the foundation for some of the big companies. That's how we're going to build America's future. And it starts in places just like this here today. And that's why we're here. So I'm hopeful that some of our people will find jobs. I'm hopeful that we can help start some new small businesses and help the ones we've got expand. I'm hopeful that some of our people can get better skills and so they can have better wages. But at the bottom of all this, I hope through making progress for our state, perhaps we can convince people that the future can be better than what they think, and that we can give to our kids and grandkids a better Indiana and a better America. At the bottom, that's what this is all about. So I'm grateful to all of you for helping in a small way here today make that happen. Thanks for having me.